All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Town of Munster Planning Commission for Tuesday, October 12th, 2021 to order. Please set your phones on stun and let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Van Wood, roll call, please.
Councilor Mellon.
Present.
Councilor Gardner is absent. Councilor Tulowitzki is absent. Stuart Friedman.
Present.
Roland Raffin.
Here.
Brian Specht.
Here.
Chairman Baker.
Present. All right, we have a quorum. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from last month, September 14th, 2021. Any motions, modifications? What say you?
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the minutes and I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Either none, I guess we have new rules. Mr. Vanderwood, tell me when the rules changed, please.
I will. Councilor Mellon.
Yes.
Councilor Gardner. Oh, sorry. Stuart Friedman.
Yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes.
Brian Specht.
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. Councilman? Come on down.
We just started.
We just did the minutes and the pledge. You believe that? Next is preliminary hearings. We have none. After public hearings, first one is PC 21-012, Plan Unit Development Amendment, PC 21-013, Commercial Subdivision Preliminary Plat, PC 21-014, Development Plan Approval for the Hospitality Project Services at Lake Business Center, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Vanderwood.
Thank you. This project was before the Plan Commission last month at a preliminary hearing. There are three actions being requested. An amendment to the Lake Business Center Plan Unit Development, approval of a development plan for a 4-story, 107-room, home 2 suites hotel, and a subdivision which would separate this parcel from the overall Lake Business Center parcel. As I mentioned, the project is located here in the northwest corner of the Lake Business Center. The proposal is to develop that corner with a 107-room, 4-story home 2 suites with a 21-space parking lot to the east. It is adjacent to an existing 99-room hotel, and it's currently vacant. There's a stormwater reservoir underneath the lot. The planned unit development calls for a parking lot in this area. So what they're proposing is not contemplated in the existing Lake Business Center PUD, hence the need for a PUD amendment. With respect to the overall site plan, they're proposing, as I said, 21 parking spaces on site. The remainder of the parking spaces to be used by the hotel would be to the east in the existing hotel parking lot, and then to the south in the warehouse parking lot. As we discussed at the last meeting, this Lake Business Center has shared parking throughout. So that is a legitimate claim by the applicant that they would be sharing that parking. However, we also did note that the PUD and the shared parking arrangement assumes a certain number of spaces, including the spaces that would be on the site of this proposed hotel. So there's I guess, a point of discussion there with respect to the parking. As far as the actual building itself, I'll just note that the site plan and the building design is in compliance with our zoning standards. The Lake Business Center doesn't really include any design standards for the buildings or landscaping or anything like that over and above our zoning ordinance. So that's the set of standards that we apply to this project, or apply to this project. So you can see that the building is, from a material perspective, brick and stone. It does have the transparency requirements, but in a planned unit development, specifically, a lot of those design standards that we went through with, for example, the Maple Crossing project don't apply because it is a PUD and it doesn't have any separate design standards. So with respect to the building and the parking lot, the landscaping, those types of things, it does comply with our code. For all those who are observing, this is a view from the south, the main area. This would be the main entrance. This is that 21 space parking lot to the east, and then this is the crosswalk to access the shared parking to the south. There's just another view from the east looking west. And you can kind of see, get a sense of what the proposed building is. At the last meeting of the Plan Commission, there was some discussion about the utilization of the parking areas. The applicant did provide this. Actually, there were two concerns raised at that meeting. The first had to do with parking. The second had to do with the overall view from the Cambridge Court condominiums, which are located to the north of the project. So the applicant has provided this parking view analysis. It was included in the staff report for those who had a chance to review that. But
is that specific just to this site though, or to the overall development?
So this is just an analysis showing
The parking,
the
that's all.
utilization of the existing parking.
Just of the entire development, or just this particular project?
It's
Because isn't it supposed to be cross-access parking?
So what this is an analysis of the utilization of the existing Home Foods parking lot,
Only for this site?
which is a parking lot to the east of this building. So what they're showing here is, it's shown on the illustration here, a daytime parking snapshot showing the overall utilization of that parking lot. And then there's a view at night. Yeah, I wouldn't call this a sort of scientific analysis of the parking situation there, but I think it's meant to be representative of the overall usage of the parking lot. And we can let the applicants kind of speak to that. I just wanted to point out this is a new exhibit. This is the view again from the existing Homewood Suites to the Cambridge Courts condominium. So you can kind of see the distance and the separation, as well as the, I guess, the fact that there's garages on that south-facing side of those condos. So that's what I think they were hoping to show with this additional exhibit. I'll also note that we had a few comments from the staff about certain zoning standards that they had to meet, which were mentioned in the last report, landscaping and sidewalks and things like that. So if you look at the report shown here, you can see that these red clouds indicate where they've made revisions to comply with the zoning. There's one sort of outstanding aspect of the planning that hasn't been resolved, and that has to do with the stormwater and the overall capacity of the drainage system. This is a technical conversation that's been going back and forth between our town engineer and the engineers working on the project. Essentially, it has to do with how they're calculating the existing capacity and the existing use. And so because that's sort of an outstanding issue, the recommendation that I had with respect to the development plan was to approve it only conditioned upon a final review and approval by our town engineer. So that being said, I think with respect to two of the three petitions tonight, the development plans and the subdivision Both of those, I think, could be approved by the planning commission based on their compliance with our existing standards, subject to, as I said, a final review by our town engineer and approval of the plan unit development amendment by the town council.
Okay, I have a question. Is this our approval of the development plan and the preliminary plat, or is it our approval for a recommendation to the town council per se?
The development plan and the preliminary plat would be approved by the planning commission. The plan unit development amendment would be a recommendation from the planning commission to the town council.
Thank you. So David, do we have to do all of these as individuals because of the breakout, or can they be done together and then voted on? How does that work from Robert's Rules of Government?
In my opinion, I think you need to separate them out and three would then be separate, and the PUD development amendment, I think, would be the first item right now.
Is there a sequence?
Well, Mr. Chairman, would you say if the PUD did or did not get approved, would you do the other two? So would you start it out as a PUD amendment to allow special use for a hotel, and then the other two would be after that?
Well, I mean, or we can, if it goes to the town council without the approval from planning on the plat and the plan, they're gonna just kick it back. I mean, we can approve those two things contingent upon, the town council's approval and then handle it that way. Then it doesn't have to come back to us.
That
Does
would
that
be
make
my,
sense?
that would be my recommendation. Yes.
Guys are smart, okay. All right, so we're gonna talk about the approval of the plan and approval of the plat. You gave us a nice setup. Is there anybody on behalf of the petitioner that'd like to do their thing? All right,
I'd like to add. I will point out that it is a public hearing for all.
all right, that's next. If she doesn't want to say anything or anybody doesn't want to say anything on behalf of the petition, that's next. All right, so before it's a public hearing, is anything from the board on this before we open it up to hear from the folks? All right, let's do that first. I'll open up the public hearing on these particular matters. And if you have something to add to help us along, please come up to the mic and say something. Your name, your address. Once. Going twice. 3 times, bring it back to the board.
Oh, I'm not seeing anyone. Make sure everybody's in the room. We have anybody waiting to go.
Did you let him in?
I said I don't.
Give him the Heisman at the door, Tom, huh?
I don't think we have it. Everybody. Double check. Not seeing anybody.
All right, back to the board. Anything? I mean, I have a couple of questions. You made a statement about it having underground stormwater. Is that on the pad or on the site to which they're building on?
Yes.
I don't remember that. So there's an underground storage facility inside. So how is that handled as it relates to the capacity? Because I'm assuming water off of that particular PUD in the entire development is getting stored under there. What happens to that capacity?
I think Darcy Pelham from the representing the petitioner could probably answer that question. But I will just note that that is the subject of the
Oh, it is.
discussion between Bill DiTomaso.
Okay, that's a good one.
Agreed.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Darcy Pelham. 3939 Prairie Way Road South, Indianapolis 46240 with Price. The underground detention takes in 5.34 acres. It was installed with the Homewood Suites Hotel. So it takes the roadway to the south of the hotel, plus the Homewood Suites, and it was sized for 2.56 acres of additional storage, which is the Homewood 2 Suites. And so we have done those calculations. It seems to fit, and we have our release rates. We have 2 water quality units that are sized and adequate for this system, and we have the cover required over the system. And those were, I think, the main points that Jill was making or wanted to make sure that the system was adequate. And it's just to the east of the Home 2 Suites Hotel in the parking lot there.
So it's in the existing parking lot, it has nothing to do with the ground that you're gonna be building upon currently as a part of this project?
No, it is in the green
It is.
space.
It's
to
in the
west
green
of
space.
Hotel. We're gonna put a parking lot on top of it, and then the building goes to the west of it. So we're not going to disturb the underground detention system. We are just gonna simply remove one of the water quality structures that leads to the detention system.
That may be located here. though.
Is that gonna be a part of the new replat? Is that underground storage facility that handles the two hotels gonna be part of the new lot that you're asking to create?
Yes, it will be included in that.
Is it just the parking or what we see that, or none of the roadways are gonna be a part of that plat, correct?
Correct.
And is there cross easements to be able to get in and out of their time as a part of the PUD? I would assume there is, but if this is getting carved out as its own parcel, you've got to assume that they could also trade hands.
Well, there's two things. The site plan as shown here on the PUD, which includes those roads, that is the approved plan. So they can't change that plan without getting a PUD amendment from the town. But there is cross-access easements on there.
For ingress and egress. Even if you carve off those parcels, is that true then? Is that a legal thing, or is that within a PUD, you can have multiple owners?
You can, you have to do it by agreement, but it has to be very.
Right, no, I understand. Thank you. Nobody else? Darcy, could you also talk about a shared parking agreement as a part of this plat? I mean, are you gonna have an agreement with the rest of the development to have parking rights?
There is a letter that the owner drafted with Symbol Development, the owner of the PUD, that was sent to Tom in the first submittal. That is a shared parking agreement.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir,
I brought this up last month. And due to the size of that development, being roughly 750,000 square feet of warehouse, that we don't know in the future what that warehouse is going to entail. They're going to build office spaces in there, it's going to change medical. I think it's short-sighted on this commission to approve a hotel there where it looks like, according to staff notes, that we're already 481 spots deficient in parking in this area. And we don't know what's going to go into that future warehouse.
So we did a
I was still speaking.
hold on a second.
So, yes, you did an analysis, took pictures at nighttime. It could have been a Sunday night that was not busy. It could have been, I don't know what the parameters are, how you did a traffic study or how you studied the traffic or parking in there. What I'm saying is that many spots, that whole development as a parcel and as a group of PUD was supposed to have this much parking.
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, the PUD doesn't allow the developer, Tom, to change uses, right? I mean, as a warehouse, it has to be a warehouse. If I want to convert that to a different use, do they have to come in for a building plan or a building permit? So if it goes from warehouse to another use, pick something, I don't know, jumpy house place, I don't know. I mean, and it brings more people in. Does that have any impact from the standpoint of the town as far as parking in this thing, since it's, the math is very interesting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that similar to this, the parking is laid out based on certain uses being part of the PUD. Right? So they calculated it based on warehouse, based on retail, based on office space, and that's, I would say that given that the actual standards for this PUD are pretty
Interesting.
well, there's not a whole lot of them. The site plan and that parking plan comprise a majority of the overall PUD standards. I think if we saw something that was, substantial change of use with implications about, pretty big parking indications that we could probably, review that as part of a PUD. I think we're probably.
I think if there was another use to your point, Roland, that came in and would create additional pressure on the parking lot, that's the time that we would have that conversation. Sure. I mean, you can't say what if on this particular.
But I can also say, I remember approving this PUD that showed for that parking space, not another element.
Understand? A lot of the things that were approved back in the day when we did that are not the same now.
Well, this plan's pretty close to the same as the last one we approved.
So, I mean, that being said, for that back corner, if there's gonna be additional changes to the warehouse to bring more people in or bring additional pressure to the parking, I would think that would be something we would see as a part of that use, not necessarily this request. But this is taking away the potential for more, parking, there's no doubt.
And then the same,
Hold on a second, man, we'll let you talk a second. Yes, sir.
Now, do you know how much of that square footage in that PUD is still vacant? I mean, how much is there still to be occupied?
I don't know the exact number, but it is pretty much fully occupied.
Are you talking about the warehouse?
Yeah.
The warehouse is being used. Yeah, the warehouse is being used. There's a section, kind of the southeast corner that's not being used. But overall, the rest of the development is being used.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is that also including the office space? I know there's a dermatologist and a bunch of. The office space in front of the warehouse, is that also fully occupied?
Yeah.
Just go along with Mr. Braffin's points. When you look at the review here, and I might have mentioned this last time, when you look at the documents provided, the comprehensive plan was done 11 years ago, and it had contemplated a completely different use with the South Shore train being there and the station and this whole area being built up. And at this point, we don't have an updated comprehensive plan, so we don't know what the town actually does want for this sort of facility. When you build a hotel, I presume you want it to be there for many decades to come. And to the point that Roland's making, if we limit the ability to increase parking in the future, it makes it harder to repurpose the warehouse to a jumping house or whatever you might want to come in later. And that's my primary concern here, is that I think we ought to have a comprehensive plan that really states, because we know that South Shore is coming now with 2 different stations in different locations, and this whole part of the town is likely to change in the next decade or for the foreseeable use of this property. So that's where I stand on this. I'd like to have more guidance from the town and from a plan before we would approve this use and effectively take away the ability to have something else happen with the Lake Business Center PUD overall.
Is that as it relates to this particular petition, Councilman, or is that something as it relates to the next step when it does come to the council?
Well, to the extent that on the third part, we're going to recommend something to the council on the PUD, just making comments based on that. And part of the issue is the implementing the plan as presented would give us a 481 parking deficit, which, yeah, that would limit the ability to let this planned unit development grow into something else that might really serve the town better. So, so that's my comment.
So the PUD amendment request is coming from the developer, not the petitioner. Is that true? So if my assumption would be an amendment to the PUD would come from the developer and have to be signed off by the developer.
Developer of this lot.
Well, there's no lot yet. I mean, until this gets approved, there's no lot. So, I mean, that's great magic and I like it, but I mean, it's still part of that overall premise. So I guess I'm kind of, curious about that thought process. All right, we did a whole bunch of stuff, ma'am. Go ahead. You have some comments?
I was just gonna say, the same owner that's wanting to develop Home Two Suites, owns Homewood Suites, and Hampton Inn. And the Hampton Inn is not in this PUD, and we looked at that parking as well, for the shared parking. And if you look at the ordinance, then we're 69 spaces that we need shared, including all 3 hotels, with the parking requirement per ordinance.
Yes, if it was not in this PUD.
Right. It doesn't take into account the parking that possibly needed for rest development.
And a lot of the other things that you would have to do if in fact it was separate from this PUD. So there's some good and bad to everything. I understand that. Any other, I mean, did you guys have any conversations with the developer as it relates to that amendment petition? Did they agree to that? So between you as the petitioner and Symboard, was there agreement that he acknowledged the fact that he's okay with amending this PUD?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
But Symboard have you purchased, he wants to sell everything and get out of it completely, correct?
Well, that's hearsay.
No.
So he wants
No, I
to-
mean,
he's sold a portion of it, he's retained, the Symboard group has retained ownership of the warehouse
Of that.
portion.
So have you purchased, or is this contingent, the purchase is contingent upon this plan being approved then?
It's contingent on approval, yes, the long transaction.
Because I believe that Mr. Symboard has been talking about a hotel for a while, and I believe that he was getting the impression that that wasn't going to be approved. So I feel like this is a way for it to be approved by not having him involved. That's just my kind of what I'm seeing in this so much. So like I believe the Potbelly and Meatheads, I believe that he was going to be retaining some sort of ownership. Is that what he's what the agreement is for this as well? That he would have, so that he would be making a profit on this?
Well, he's a partner in the Homewood Suites Hotel, so he's our partner in that project also. But I can't speak for the
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've said it before regarding the parking, and I also, as a Munster resident and a resident's going to be here for hopefully decades to come, when I first moved here, there was no hotels. In a matter of so many years, we're talking about a fifth hotel. I don't see that as the best fit for the town of Munster or its residents and going forward. I agree with Councilman over here when he said we should have a study and think about what we want for plan. The town is going to be different in 10 years than it is today. And I urge the commission to use caution in regards to approving a fifth hotel in the town of Munster.
I would echo Mr. Raffin and Commissioner Tulowitzki, because it will limit, we're turning that section is becoming a hotel campus, and we are growing, we're going to have quite a bit of growth here coming up in the next decade, and we're without a comprehensive plan, we are limiting very much what can, go forward in that area. So I have a question.
Well, I mean, my 2 cents is considering where it is, I'm not opposed to having a hotel there at all. I mean, especially if the Lansing Country Club becomes additional business, there's going to be more demand for hotels, and I'm sure that's built into their plan. The fact that it sits in the back portion of this development is not putting in the forefront like we did in some of the other locations with hotels and have been. And therein lies a benefit from that perspective as well. Also, there's a chance that this abuts at that area. If you bring up an aerial town, to the northwest, to the town's, public works grounds. So if you want to talk about big picture and comprehensive plan, which we keep doing studies, but those are continually challenged by market changing. There's some ideas to be able to tie it into that aspect of it as well, should you ever want to have additional ingress and egress to the northwest through the current Public Works Department. Now, if you're going to develop the country club, you're going to have a lot of activity over there that's going to be coming down Fisher Street too. So that should have some impact of this as well. But one site versus the big comprehensive thing, I don't see as being much of a challenge, especially with what we did to this PUD. It's vibrant, there's activity there, it's serving a purpose. Let's try to do the best that we can is how I'm doing it. Perspective, you have something? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Well, you guys all know the profession I'm in, and I don't, I have a natural adverse feelings towards hotels just because of lending to them is very difficult. It's not my concern as to them being very nice hotels right now. They're the Hamptons nice and Homewood and this Home Two Suites I'm sure would be very nice. It's my concern down the road. And once that flagship agreement runs out, and then it becomes something else, and then it becomes something else, and then it becomes an eyesore. And that's my concern down the road. And with having, one hotel, I think those are easily can be replaced when you get to 5 hotels. And as Roland said, when I moved into town 20 years ago, there weren't any hotels in the city, in the town. And now we're looking at 5. What's created all that demand over the last year, a couple of years, additional hotels going up, in Hammond right on the expressway, by their landing, I don't know what the name of that place is. There are 4 hotels going up. Oxbow Landing. I do understand Mr. Baker's comments as well, that it's, that it may not be, it may fit well with this part of it, but I have some reservations as well.
So, Mr. Wickman, considering that we're talking about the PUD and hotel usage, what are some of the options available if this is a recommendation to the council, but they're looking for an amendment and a replat?
I would say this, PC 21-12, as the applicant seeking an amendment to the Lake Business Center PUD. In order to do that, they need to send, the plan commission has to take some action. Presumably tonight. And at that point, the plan commission can send a favorable recommendation to the council, an unfavorable recommendation to the council, or no recommendation to the council. And then you see what happens with that. Then you can go ahead and down the road with the development plan and the new plan.
Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just one additional comment. I'm not saying that I am for or against the hotel. I think there was a good presentation last time of why it makes sense, makes economic sense from the perspective of Hilton, et cetera. What I am trying to articulate is I don't think it ought to really be what Steve thinks about whether or not a hotel makes sense, but rather looking at where the town's going, getting a real professional view and what do we need from the town, getting input from the public. So we have a little bit of a mix of opinion, but a majority opinion that we probably don't need a 5th hotel. I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but I do think that that's what a comprehensive plan, those are the types of questions that we ought to be answering, that'll look at the next decade or longer. So just to clarify, that's where I'm coming from with what I would say is probably a neutral recommendation, waiting for that in favor of a comprehensive plan.
Okay, folks, I'll try it again. We're going to have to make some type of motion to move this along. So if
Mr. Chairman, at this time, regarding PC 21012 Plan Unit Development Amendment, my motion is to make a unfavorable recommendation to town council.
so, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And second, so discussion. So we got a motion for an unfavorable recommendation on PC 21-012, the P Plan Unit Development Amendment to the Town Council with a second. Is that a fair rehash of that? Tom, Mr. Wickland, official staff people?
Yes. I think that's fine.
All right, any discussion? I mean, I said my piece. I mean, at least if it goes to the town council, you know, to your point, Councilman, a comprehensive plan is going to get a little bit more broad brush than what's going to happen in this particular parcel with this PUD. I mean, it just is. So, I mean, if you're looking for that kind of direction, it's going to be very hard to provide a comprehensive options for every parcel that could potentially be developed or redeveloped in town. It's just tough. As it relates to moving it forward, I mean, that'll just delay this, and that's fine. If the council wants to make a call on whether or not hotels or what happens with the PUD, hopefully that will be comprehensive to provide a big picture. So every time they come back with this one-off, or when we sell the outlot in front of on Calumet Avenue, what's going to happen then? So we're going to do the same thing and talk about it again, because they're going to want to move that, because developers develop and sell. That's how they make money. Is that right, Mr. Speck?
That's typically, yes.
Okay, so that's what they're trying to do. And if that happens and they do it well, the tax base in the community continues to rise, which is a good thing. So that being said, is there any other discussion?
Well, this is also just a recommendation of town council. They could do
Yes, it
whatever
is.
they want and override or vote on the second.
Right.
Right.
Understand?
I mean, I wasn't on the planning commission or involved with the town council when the PUD was playing. So I think, I understand what you're saying, Bill, but I also understand we're rolling.
Just
Everybody's-
just one vote, so
So it's just, let's send it to the town council, see what they want to do.
any other comments?
Oh, Mr. Freeman.
I can't see Mr. Freeman. I can't hear Mr. Freeman. I don't know. Stuart, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it's a little bit difficult. You guys got to speak clearly into the microphone.
You have to let us know, you know, because it's just not the same without you sitting here, Stuart. I'm having some tough times. You're not
I know.
commenting enough.
I know, I wish I was there.
Okay. So, all right, you understand where we are, sir?
Yes,
All right, no more discussion. Could you reread that particular motion, Mr. Vanderwood, so we know what we're voting on, please? Because I'm getting older.
Yeah, the motion was to forward to the town council an unfavorable recommendation with respect to the amendment of the Lake Business Center Plan Unit Development to permit the development of a Home 2 Suites hotel.
So a yes vote means you agree with it, and no vote means you disagree with it.
Correct. Yes is unfavorable.
Thank you. Let me ask one other question. Mr. Wickland, do we do this vote and then have to play items on, or additional actions on PC 21013 and 014?
You could do it that way, but what's the point? In other words,
So I don't, even if we do this and it passes, then we don't have to do anything with those.
table it.
10-4. All right, motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilor Mellon,
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
yes,
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker,
No.
motion carries.
So now we need to have a motion to table 013 and 014. Is that correct, Mr. Wickland?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to table 13 and 14.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Either none, Mr. Vanderwood.
Councilor Mellon,
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
yes,
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker,
Yes. All right, so that takes care of that. So when will the town council hear this recommendation and bring it under advisement? Because I know if I'm sitting on the other side of the table, I'm going, what? And how long?
So in this instance, I think we would want to take the full record of the decision to the town council, so we probably want to prove findings of fact. Right? We can do that.
Tom, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to speak into the microphone.
Okay, so what I was saying, Bill, Chairman Baker asked when this would be heard by the town council, and I suggested that we would have the approved findings of fact available for the council as well as draft minutes of the meeting, which we could present to them at
When's the next council meeting?
That's what I'd like to know. When's the next council meeting?
next Monday. Yeah, we could bring it to the town council next Monday, as long as the board approves the findings of fact tonight. Yeah, you did. You prepared them. I don't know what the recommendation was on it.
Question. Can you approve the DDP and the replat upon approval with conditional approval of town council? And then if they do push this forward, then we can move forward with the plans coming back and delaying them up. Is that possible?
I think the question is whether or not the board would approve the development plan and the subdivision contingent upon, rather than table them, whether they would actually, whether the commission would approve them, or contingent upon town council approval.
I heard what you asked for, and that's definitely an interesting perspective. But we just did an unfavorable to the town council and tabled the plat and the development plan. And if the development plan isn't having a favorable, or if the use doesn't have a favorable opinion from the town council, the development plan and the plat is mute. And I get it, it's 6 1/2 dozen of the other. Sorry, we didn't pick the one you suggested.
And I have prepared findings, but they go the other way, so I don't know if these are.
As amended, right? We do them as amended?
Well,
I'll think about it. I mean, it's just under the premise that, you know, it's nice to know that they would at least have an opportunity to get some kind of feedback in so much as they're trying to invest in the community on how they can try to continue to do that. My opinion. Thank you.
my problem is I don't know how possibly have findings read by Monday.
Council Wickland, you're gonna have to speak into the microphone. I cannot hear you.
You have to
Oh,
talk
let's
into
read
the
this.
microphone,
Let's read
David,
this.
because Stuart can't hear you. So Stuart, David was talking about how he felt that the findings of fact would have to be approved for the presentation to the town council, and was pondering how that would happen between now and the meeting on Monday, because what's prepared has a different storyline.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so while that is out there, I'm going to continue on the march here. So the next public hearing is PC 21-016, Community Resources Inc. requesting approval of a preliminary plat for Community Resources Inc. Phase 2. Mr. Vanderbilt. Hits keep coming. All right, so this is having to do with the public hearing based upon doing the new plat over where the proposed train station is going, off of Columbia.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, I ate up some time there.
Thanks. So as you said, yes, this is a public hearing for the Community Resources in Phase 2 subdivision, which is a 12-lot subdivision here, kind of in the middle of community estates, surrounded by the Community Resources Phase 1 subdivision. And there's some history to this project. There was a preliminary plat approved in 2008, and it was never developed. There were some environmental studies that were ongoing, and they recently got approval or got a clean environmental report, so they have presented this plan. Since the original one was approved, some of the lots have been sold off, which were originally included in that phase two, these lots here. So they've had to change their plans a little bit. And that's why they're coming back with a new request for approval of the preliminary plat. I can show you the preliminary plat here. This is the proposal. As you can see, it includes an extension of Andrew Lane here, which terminates in cul-de-sac, as well as the platting of 12 lots, single-family lots, the expansion of a retention pond here, southwest corner rather, and then the dedication of a park area, which is shown here. And north, in this drawing, north is to your right, so this is the northeast corner of the development. So they would be dedicating this lot here as a park area. It would be adjacent to an existing dedicated park area here, as well as an existing detention pond here. There was kind of a preliminary hearing held last month. And since then, I'll just say that there was a public notice was published. And I've included in the staff report a comment letter that we sent to community resources from the staff, as well as a comment letter that was sent by the park board to community resources. And so at this point, this is based on the last conversation I've had with Don Torring, but there's really probably 3 items that need to be discussed and addressed by the planning commission tonight, so that you can give community resources the input they need to go forward and finalize their plans. So the first is that there's a detention pond, which I'll pull up the aerial now, so you can kind of see where it is here. Some existing detention ponds here on either side of Down Drive. And our town rules, ordinances require 2 things. One, they require sidewalks to be adjacent, basically at the edge of the right of way on all public streets, especially in new subdivisions. And then 2, they require a setback for detention pond. And the setback is 10 feet plus 2 feet for every 1 foot of depth of the pond. So neither of these ponds have that required setback, and in addition, they don't have really any level ground on which to construct a sidewalk. So that has been the case since phase 1 was completed, which was in mid-2000s. And now they're kind of coming in and they're expanding this pond and making some adjustments to the subdivision. Now would be the time for them to comply with the codes and standards, which were in fact in place when the project was originally built. Based on the sort of on the ground analysis that they've done, it kind of determined that it would be very difficult at this point to go back and try to retrofit these ponds to meet those standards. If you've had a chance to be out there, you may have noticed the grade falls pretty steeply from the curve here. So what they've suggested, and this is just what I've heard from Don, I don't know if they're still proposing this, but as of the last time I talked to them, what they were suggesting they do was
Well, let's explain that part of it too.
Okay.
So wait, I have a question. So
These ponds are already there. They were approved. The city put, or the town put streets and infrastructure in, but now you're saying it's wrong? I love this.
Well, the town didn't put the streets and infrastructure.
Well, they approved it, I'm sure.
That's the question. There's,
That's a,
there was no plan commission approval. The plan commission, there's no record of a plan commission approval of the final plan. So there's some question as to how that actually happened, but I wasn't here at the time.
I got it.
no, neither was I. It's not, I don't get defensive. I'm trying to call balls and strikes here. So
Well,
here you said,
I'll tell you that the infrastructure is not complete in phase one. And what they're doing now is they're actually modifying the pond to the north of Donna Drive. So as part of phase two, they're making an expansion to that pond.
okay, thank
So
you.
I think we all know that when you touch something that doesn't comply, you have to bring it to compliance. So
Something happens,
that's
that's for
the
sure.
question before the plan commission. So that's the first issue that I'm raising. Second question that I think the plan commission needs to address has to do with the cul-de-sac standard. So in the town of Munster, the maximum length of a cul-de-sac is 600 feet. And the cul-de-sac that they're proposing is approximately 650 feet. So this would be a situation where the plan commission will have to make a decision whether or not to waive that standard. And then the third issue, not really issue, but item to be discussed by the plan commission is the dedication of parkland. And in this instance, I've included the correspondence from the parks director or the park board. And the recommendation that they've sent to us is that we should accept the dedication. But there are a few things that they would have wanted to see as sort of a condition of receipt of that dedication, and those are listed in that report there. I can kind of pull them up for you. So they're shown here. It says the proposed parkland parcels need to be cleared of any environmental concern. Item 2, it just says it's desired. Number 3, accessible pedestrian route access to the park property is necessary. This is kind of, I'll just go back to the aerial here. This is noted because this is the public access point for the park. And
Where's it town?
this is right here. You'll see that. This is Columbia. This is this private McLaughlin Drive. And there's no sidewalks along this road. So they're noting that if this were to be accepted as a park, it would be inaccessible to pedestrians. So they're asking that pedestrian connectivity be put into place. They're saying that they would like to have the fencing that's along this community estates extended to have the physical barrier between the park and Columbia. Currently, there's another park area shown in the phase 1 plat, and that's still owned by community resources. So they're asking that that also be dedicated formally. They're also asking that the scrub trees be cleared from the land, cleared from the parcel, leaving only the any large high quality trees. And 7, they're asking that the parkland be graded and reseeded to allow for it to drain properly and not hold water in areas of the park. They're also asking some other kind of questions. How to get sidewalks there. Just stating again that the fencing should be extended along Columbia Avenue. And then finally, they're asking whether or not parking, since there's no parking on site, on-street parking would have to be, would have to be in place, and they're not aware whether or not McCloughan Drive has on-street parking, since it's a private drive, part of Parksville Village. So those are that's the input from the Parks Board. Other than those, like I said, those are the three issues that I think, or three questions that the Plan Commission should discuss and provide guidance to the applicant.
Okay, any questions for Tom before I let the petitioner speak?
Mr. Commissioner, I do have a
Yes, ma'am.
question. Tom, so the park, the outlet that was originally shown as the park area in phase one, so it's along the Macquarie.
Yeah.
I couldn't say the property either, but so in order to connect, if you're gonna be able to walk to the other part that is now shown, that goes over a pipeline. So sidewalks can go across there. Yeah, or can they?
Yes,
They can go across the pipeline.
yes. I think what they're talking about is, can you see the screen?
Yeah, I have mine too.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the park area outlet A that they're proposing as a new dedication.
Right.
This is the park area that is on phase one.
Mhm.
And what they're saying is that there's no way for a pedestrian to access this park area, the first one, because the sidewalk ends here and does not, because this is where phase one ends at this line. This Richard McClory Drive is part of the Hartsfield Village. So it's a private road, it has public easement for ingress and egress, but it's private. So that typically you put the sidewalk here at the edge of the public right of way. Well, in this instance, this is private property.
But
With no sidewalk.
isn't there a relationship between Hartsfield Village and community resources that you get a sidewalk put in there, I would guess.
I'm sorry, what did Roland say? Say it again.
I just said, Stuart, that there's a relationship between Hartsfield Village and community resources that can accomplish that sidewalk.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Notice that one thing that I found interesting is that the house that's on the corner of Jenna and the street that none of us can say. or that sidewalk from in front of that person's home should also will have to be extended as well from that personal residence. If the developer puts in that sidewalk in that park lot, it's not going to connect anything.
Right, because this is, so from the edge of the sidewalk to the public right of way begins at this interior edge of the sidewalk. So the sidewalk is within the public right of way. However, there is no public right of way here. So like, this is a private property. If you can just kind of watch where my cursor is going. So the sidewalk on, like if they were to put a sidewalk here, that's on this person's lot. So, yeah, it's tricky situation.
So there would also need to be an agreement with that homeowner. I just want to make sure I'm clear. Basically, we're looking for a side.
Dave, hold on a second, all right? Any other, you guys are gonna talk to you big time, so any other questions for Tom to start these? All right, petitioners, I'm sorry. Mr. Adi, Mr. Tringa, introduce yourself as the petitioners and help with what you're trying to accomplish.
Good evening, Don Torringa with Torringa Engineering, also Dave Adi with Community Foundation representing.
I'm sorry, please speak into the microphone so I can hear you, sir.
I thought I was. Oh, it wasn't on the story, sorry. Don Torringa with Torringa Engineering, 907 Ridge Road, Munster, Indiana. Dave Adi with Community Foundation representing community resources. In relation to the three things that have been brought up, we'll take number 3 first, which is the sidewalk. And Mr. Specht is exactly correct in that that is private property, but I do believe that we could probably get permission?
Yeah,
I guess you're looking to extend the sidewalk all the way across in parallel with McClory Drive, all the way to this corner, which would be contiguous with this one.
I don't think that you're not expecting that, are you? Are you expecting just to the end of the park? Or are you expecting the sidewalk to go all the way to Columbia Avenue where there is no sidewalk?
Well, the recommendation from the park board is to extend it into the park. But your idea, Dave, I think is a good one.
So you're
connect it
looking
to
to
the
be right to there.
Columbia. I think that would make sense to connect it all the way to Columbia where that other one turns. Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
This is what's desired.
Yes.
Is it also desired to have this fencing extend all the way down?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyway, in regards to the sidewalk across the private property, there is a relationship obviously between Community Foundation and Hartsfield Village, so there shouldn't be an issue. However, that is private property. It would have to be something that the homeowner would agree to. Otherwise, I don't know how you could get a sidewalk over there unless you want to cross the street, get on the other side of Macquarie Drive, and then came back across Macquarie Drive to get there. Or as Mrs. Mellon said, do it on the pipeline. Oh. Anyway,
So we're gonna work on the sidewalk. Okay.
that's number one. Number two, and brief me again, what was that? Just
The
very
link to
quickly.
the cul-de-sac.
Oh, the length of the
Yes.
cul-de-sac, yes. What, we originally brought this in 2008, and we had two cul-de-sacs. However, with the two cul-de-sacs, we were utilizing lots 3, 4, and 5, and re-subdividing those with the development. 3, 4, and 5, as you can see with the little 3, the little 4, and the little 5, all 3 of those on Andrew Lane have been sold. So we reconfigured this, and we have one cul-de-sac. That cul-de-sac length from Jenna Drive to the end of the cul-de-sac is 657 feet. The maximum distance by ordinance is 650. So we are asking for a variance to allow that cul-de-sac to go in. If the 57 feet is taken off and it's only 600 feet, then the lots cannot be 100 feet wide, which is the standard that all the lots within community resources have been designed for. Well, that's number 2.
may I ask a question?
Well, let him finish first, please.
Number 1, in regards to the detention ponds, I was completely unaware that there's no record of this being approved because the subdivision plat was signed and sealed and recorded. We have documents that were given to me by Cheryl Zick today, which I didn't bring, because I didn't realize I needed to, of where these things were approved by the planning commission. We were completely unaware at the time, and the review, which was done by Mr. Mandan, who was the town engineer back then, never brought up the fact that those detention ponds were too close to the right of ways. There is an issue with the retention ponds in that they are pretty steep. So what we would like to do in order to rectify this would be to regrade the slopes along Donna Drive and along Megan Way to allow the sidewalks to be up behind the curb instead of at the property line. If there is an issue with the slopes down to the ponds being too steep, Mr. Adia said, what if we install a railing from falling into the pond? Those are things that we would like to be able to do. The Outlot C detention pond on Barber Lane is, the slope is not too steep in order to put the sidewalk back at the property line. However, there is a line of maybe 6 or 7 pine trees that are very large. So that would also, would either require pine trees to be taken out, or it would require the sidewalk to veer over to the back of the curb also. Hopefully that's understandable, but that's,
Commissioner,
Okay, hold on a second, man. Is that it, Don?
well, no, what I was going to say, the last thing I was going to say is if we were to have to put these detention ponds 25 feet away from the right of way, the detention within those ponds would not meet the ordinances for the town of Munster, and there would be flooding within the subdivision.
We don't want that.
Exactly. Not a fan. All right, thank you. All right, so I'll bring it back to the board for questions to the petitioner. Councilman, you were first, or would you like to, let the lady go first?
thank you. I just, could you clarify, I'm not quite understanding, when you said where the sidewalk would go. You said not up against the curb. I'm just like, I'm not figuring out what you mean about where you would put the sidewalk. I see others nodding. So if you can point or explain better, I'm just not getting it.
Typically, a right of way for any street within the town of Munster is 60 feet. These are 60 feet wide.
Okay,
That 60 feet is measured from the back of the sidewalk to the back of the sidewalk on the other side of the street.
okay,
So there would be a 5-foot sidewalk, there would be a 10-foot grass parkway, there would be 30 feet of street separated by 2 curb. There would be a 10-foot grass parkway and a 5-foot sidewalk. All those add up to 60 feet.
Okay.
What we are proposing to do is, because there is a sidewalk on that house that is shown as being under construction immediately to the west of the pond, is to angle that sidewalk, maybe curve it, meander it, make it look nice, bring it up to the back of the curb so that there would be a 5-foot sidewalk instead of having a 10-foot grass parkway. There would be no grass parkway. And that sidewalk would then go down Donna Drive and then down Megan Way until it gets to the lot to the south, which is also sold. And then it would meander back with a nice gentle curve. And then do the same thing on Donna Drive and Barber Lane.
so it's gonna be right up and next to the road, which the reason why there's usually a parkway in between is, I was somewhat safety and a place to plant trees. Is a dual purpose, sort of like not to have the sidewalk right next to the street.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think that's right. That's why we have the parkway there.
Right, and the issue becomes that if we were forced to put that at the property line, then it would require regrading the entire pond. Again, we would lose a considerable amount of the detention. The pipes that come into the pond and go out of the pond are at the very corners of the stone that you see there. There's one in the there would be one in the northwest corner and one in the northeast corner, and then there's one in each southwest and southeast corners of the big pond. There's a big pipe that goes underneath Donna Drive connecting the 2 ponds together. All of those pipes would have to be relocated.
All those pipes would have to be what?
Relocated. They would probably have to be taken out and put in again, which would tear the road up pretty good.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
We've had this discussion with Community Foundation and Community Resources and whoever owned Hartsfield Village before for years and years in the Planning Commission. And I would only be in favor of sidewalks that are safe with the proper distance from the street. Mr. Taranger has said it time and time again, he wanted to eliminate sidewalks, and I'm not interested in doing so.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So I don't have a problem with personally moving the sidewalks over as long as I have a safety factor. Maybe you guys look at doing the same kind of fence, maybe if it's a 4-foot ornamental that kind of matches down the sidewalk, not like a railing, but maybe the same fence style that matches along Columbia Avenue. So it looks at least decorative, Would you be open, because obviously we put parkway trees in this, would you be open possibly when the park ever gets developed, putting those trees and relocating them in the park when they come up with a park plan, so there's trees from the development that your resources, instead of planting trees, because you don't want to plant them on the slope with the sidewalk, maybe we could relocate them to the park area once they come up with a park plan for this neighborhood.
I would be agreeable with that.
Sure. But one of the things that also is in the review is that a tree study was necessary, which we did go out, and it took our field crew 4 days in order to locate all the different trees and things within this park, or within the development. Your ordinance states that for every tree that's taken out, depending on the size of it, a certain number of trees must be put back in. So those trees have to go somewhere, so that's probably a good plan.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Right, so I guess my question is, and Tom, I know this is before all of this, so it appears that the development was done, a bond was put up, the previous engineer approved it, and now you're recommending that they move ponds and do everything else. I don't think that's the right way to do things, because I think that's changing the rules of the game in the middle of it. So I'm kind of in agreement with Mr. Ref in that I would be okay with the sidewalks being designed, as Mr. Chiringa said, which would be closer to the road, but as Roland would said, also, maybe we could put up some nice fencing, that would be great. I don't know how close that is to there, but I guess for safety purposes, that would be good.
Mr. Brian Speck, just to be clear, my recommendation is not to move the pond.
Okay.
My recommendation was actually to install the sidewalks where Mr. Torringa is proposing to do that. I don't think at this point we can go back and try to comply. I bring up the standard just so that we're all aware that there is in fact a standard. It was the same setback that was required most recently of the development along Castle Drive.
Go ahead.
I had two questions. One was just simply on the length of the cul-de-sac. Have we heard from the fire chief or fire department their opinion on 657 versus 600 feet?
Yeah, at the site plan review committee meeting, this was reviewed by the fire chief, and he said as long as the turning radius of the cul-de-sac met the standard for all our fire truck, then it was fine.
I think I heard him say it's 57 feet long. Or I was in one of the meetings talking about. So anyways, my
Wait a
question,
minute, get one more question,
I
Roland.
have one more question.
I know, not you, Councilman, all right?
Sorry.
You segued in there very nicely, though. I'll applaud that.
The other question is access to the park. Kind of like Councilor Mellon, I'm trying to understand. Park area A seems like it's off McClory Drive from the previous phase. And then Park Outlot A from the second phase, looks like it might connect with that over the pipeline easement that's there. But I think, Mr. Turner, you said that lot 4 was already sold, and that is what could give access to this phase 2 park lot area, outlot A, to the new Andrew Lane. So I'm just trying to understand how kids who are going to use this park walk there, get into the park, and actually use it without going through someone's yard. Or so that's what I'd like to understand.
Well, as far as that's concerned, one of the things that was in the park department review was that they did not like the idea, or they frowned, I shouldn't say like, they frowned on the idea of a sidewalk being between residential homes.
Which would be like between 4 and 3 or 4 and 12.
4 and 12, actually not on 4 at all, but entirely on 12. But we could dedicate an easement that would allow a sidewalk to be put to get back to the park. I happen to live in White Oak Estates in Highland, which we have access to our park through a 5-foot easement, which is a sidewalk. And I think you have another one at Cobblestones at the end of one of the roads that gets back to a park. So we have no issue with doing that.
Okay, Mr. Raffin.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Trina, just want to make sure, because I know some of the detention ponds get a little full in some of the other subdivisions. We're adding these extra lots. The capability of these 2 ponds will handle these additional lots and runoff and stuff for detention.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if you look at that, Mr. Raff, you'll see outlot C, which is at the upper left-hand corner, you see a triangular area there. Well, that is being dedicated in order to expand the detention pond.
Okay.
So
So
yes.
detention is all good for the additional
detention
lots.
is more than adequate.
Great.
I have a question. So I've been reading in the newspaper, there's a train station that's supposed to be somewhere down here. And I'm curious, is the access to this train station I read about in the newspaper coming in off of Donna Drive from Columbia? Because looking at the aerial right now, that's the only point of that's the furthest south point of ingress and egress. Is there another plan for access further south towards Main Street? I don't know, that's why I'm asking the question, because if I'm driving down there, I'm not going all the way to Main Street, I'm turning the first place I can to go to the train station.
I can explain, like, you know, how it's working, if you like. So,
Yes, please.
so Main Street, just because I've been sitting on that committee, the Main Street is going to extend through, right? So the Main Street in Columbia ends now. Main Street is going to go straight forward. It's not going to be inside of the subdivision. That'll go forward. It will go underneath the train. There's a parking lot there on the other side. And then there's a walkway to come back to the station. There's also right past Main Street in Dyer, so right to the south, there will be a pull end to a sort of like, it's a small lot and it'll be used as a kiss and ride lot because you can let off and there will be a walkway that goes over that, the road going under, so you'll get right to the platform there. So can people pull into that subdivision and drop off at the train station by going to the backside? They can, but there will be, you could say more convenient or at least as convenient to go just south to the lot, to the Dyer lot and let off so they can walk straight to the platform. So, but if you're bringing up the point that that might be a busy street and we're going to have the sidewalks right on it, I don't know if that's where you were going, and have the railing.
I don't know, because if that's gonna be how people get into the train station, I would think that would be part of a comprehensive viewpoint of this particular, area in general. I mean, this is the first time we've ever talked about it, this development. I mean, none of it's come to us, so why would we be involved?
I'll just tell you that the way that the train station area is being designed is not to encourage vehicles from, accessing the station from the east. There's no parking on the east side, so there'd only be really pedestrian access. There's no kiss and ride, as Leanne said. So the only thing that we could possibly see would be informal kiss and ride situations where people were stopping on the street and dropping people off. I would say that, just looking at the way the overall circulation of the area works, the only people I can imagine who would use that, who would be more convenient to access it through community estates would possibly be the people who are driving from Westlake, since they're not going to be able to access the parking lot, so they'd have to come up north and come down Calumet and Columbia here, and then if that might be the most direct route for them to get to the station.
I'm just saying, if people are gonna come from the north, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're gonna be able to figure out what they're gonna do, but the region people are very smart and getting from A to B as quick as possible. So I'm just pointing that out as being something to factor in, because you're selling lots and houses there, and that, I'm assuming people smarter than I thought about that.
Chairman Maker.
Yes.
I've paid close attention to this because of my involvement with the subdivision as well as living in West Lakes. They are doing everything they can to make it inconvenient for any rider to come through West Lakes or come through community estates. That's why they're extending Main Street. If you live in West Lakes, you're not going to be able to drive to the train station. You can take a bike.
Or walk.
Because there's a lot of walkers in Munster.
Yes, they are.
So they are doing everything they can to where you're going to be able to board the train, the platform or whatever. There's going to be more access off of Main Street by the Kiss and Ride than coming through Donna Drive.
Thank you. I just wanted to put that out there.
I think it's an interesting point. I don't know, Tom, if there's some traffic calming or some other measures that could be done with the roadway on Donna Drive when when people go to the train is when kids go to school, usually, same time of day. So I understand the pond can't be moved. The fence there is a good idea. I don't know if there's a 5-foot, grass parkway or something that makes it a little safer, or chicanes or something just to really actually deter traffic from going in there.
Actually, that's a really good idea since we talked about narrowing roads to slow traffic a lot anyway around town.
Okay, is there anything else for Mr. Tring? I have to open this up for public hearing.
But the only, I didn't quite understand, so from McClory Drive to get into that park, will there also be walker access from, let's say, the north?
From the north.
The north is Hartsfield Village, so you're talking about from there, Councilman?
Right, I understood looking at the plat that the phase 1 park area looks like it goes just to the east of lot 1. Correct.
Yeah, it's right
And
here.
up to McClory, kind of by that pond there. Right, is that also going to be, that's where we're talking about the sidewalk going there. So people can, will that be park land? So
This would be-
kids can walk into that and then all the way into that other, the parkland for phase 2 under there.
Yeah, see, that is parkland that was dedicated with the first phase of community resources. Why it wasn't turned over or how it was not turned over, or there's perhaps maybe the Lake County GIS viewers incorrect, because that was dedicated as parkland on the plat. So it should be town of Munster property.
So as this gets developed, so and functionally, that'll be, people can go from the north or they can go through this easement, or like Parks Department can develop this into some sort of functional area. That's my question.
Yeah, there will be access from the north to answer that part of it. As far as the plans for the Parks Department, how they would develop it, I don't think they've given much thought to it since this is just kind of come before them. So I don't really have a good response for that.
Okay, but that is effectively the town's land.
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
and if it isn't, then Community Foundation will say open it.
We'll make it so. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Tring. I'm going to open now the public hearing portion of this fund and frivolity. So if you'd like to come up and speak on this particular petition, come to the microphone, state your name and address, please. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tanya Kaufman, and I live at 10230 Barber Lane, right across from Outlot C, I think it is. I just had a couple clarification questions and kind of to voice my 2 cents about some of the things that were discussed today. Is that allowed for me to?
Absolutely, that's why we're here.
Okay, great. Stuart, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So one of my concerns about the ponds, one of them was the pine trees there. Personally, I enjoy looking at them. I think we have hardly any trees in our neighborhood whatsoever. And so anything that is the least amount sizable is exciting to look at. And the rest of Munster is beautiful with their trees, and we've waited a long time for those trees to grow up. So if it is at all possible to keep those and any trees, that would be my preference. As well as the trees that have been planted down Barbara, where there will now be lots. If those can be, I do understand that it is an ordinance for them to be replaced somewhere else. I would prefer that they are replaced within our neighborhood. As I said before, I feel like there's a wealth of trees in Munster and that we really could use them in our subdivision. Whether it's in the parks or if we are able to have like a purchase program where we can like take those and plant those in our parkway or however that could work. that would be something I know that we would personally be interested in, including them in our parkway or in a park or another outlot. Regarding the, like, back to the sidewalks around those ponds, I have 3 children, and more and more children are moving into our neighborhood. My concern also is safety, because right now we have constant traffic because of the construction, but also without the construction. I don't even know why people are driving through it. They're like scoping lots or what, but, or on a smoke break, but they speed in Donna Drive currently. So my concern is about the safety. Like, I know while I would like to keep the trees, I still want it to be safe for our children, and then those sidewalks to be accessible via bike, via foot. So I would just like that to be considered, whether it is something that we narrow that road. I don't know what the process is for that. If there is a way that we can do that, that would be a preference as well. And then if we choose to do any kind of, I know in the plans, there was discussion of putting up a railing, that visually, I feel like that is kind of makes the space closed off. So I feel like I would just like to see a visual of what that would look like, if that's possible. I think that might be it. Other than, I had a question, it's maybe a little bit off topic, but I believe there's an outlot on Barbara that used to be a lot, I think, on the very first, maybe that was first phase, and I don't know the technical terms of all the layouts, but maybe it was the 2003 version of everything, and maybe that's like off the table and not talked about, but there's an outlet on there now, and I believe it was a lot prior. I just wondered what changed it to an outlet and what that outlet is designated for, if anything. So that's my question. The rest were comments.
Okay. Thank
Thanks
you.
for listening.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'm Lee Salisbury. I'm at
Mr. Salisbury, can you do this for me, please?
Okay.
Zoom people can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You also sign your sheet.
Yes.
Are you gonna make him sign before he talks? That's
yeah,
awful.
yeah,
That's harsh.
I'm
You can't talk to
I'm
him.
at 10245 Megan Way. And one of my big questions is the park area outlot, who's that for? Is it just for the 12 lots there? I'm on Megan Way, and if there were some access between 8 and 9, just at least to the cul-de-sac, then we could have access to the park as well. You know, I was told I had to put a sidewalk on either side, and now my sidewalk's gonna look a lot different than anything else by the detention pond. Am I gonna have to do anything to upgrade mine? Or, you know, because it's not gonna look like the rest of the neighborhood. Basically, you know, there's no access along Columbia Avenue. There's no sidewalks. There's no, you know, nothing along there for us to even access that park. There's no park at all in Community Estates where we're at. If there's an access,
You're requesting a sidewalk through here.
I would say, yeah, I mean,
And then it would be, you'd be able to take the
yeah, then we
sidewalk all the
could
way
take the
down.
sidewalk
Because
all
these
the
are
way
the
across.
only 2 parks in the subdivision, right, that we're talking about here that aren't available yet. These are the only 2. I get it. All right, thank you.
Yes, and so if we access on the street that nobody can pronounce, if we access on that, we're basically walking along the fence all the way down Columbia to access that at all. Because we have no other way to get in there. Now, and take my word for it, whenever people come in on Donna Drive, you were making the point about people coming in for the train station, sit in my front yard, and literally 20 to 25 people a day come in there and turn around right there in my front yard. if there's any way that we could, limit access to make it harder for them to get to the train station. I'm just throwing this out there because I see people running across up on my curb every day.
Just one comment, that you could potentially walk down Donna Drive and take the sidewalk all the way down
That's
and over.
Well, you want to wear your kids out, don't you?
We like to walk in Munster, so.
That's right. Get healthy meat points.
My youngest is in the Navy, so he's not doing much walking here. But anyway, no, it just seems to me like it's all skewed to one side, and we have no access to any of this with where we are.
Thank you, sir.
I'm just wondering if there's any thought.
All right, hold on a second, let me do this public, so I got this whole Robert's rule thing I gotta deal with. Is there any, I'm sorry, sir, are you finished? Is there more? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak on this petition? Going once, going twice. All right, I'm gonna close the public hearing portion of this TV show, and now bring it back to the board. Councilman, you had a question? Comment?
Just question about what thought is given to multi-use paths. Where people can ride bikes, and so a little bit wider than a 5-foot sidewalk. I don't know if it could be along that fence with back access, or just in general throughout this development as it's built up. I've heard others mention that there is limited park space here, so to make it easier and safer for kids to get around the development, I'm just curious what thought is given to that.
That's a good one. I have a question as well. Is there an HOA for this subdivision? No. So is the town doing the ponds as far as the maintenance program, Mr. Vanderwood, or has that not yet been determined? Because last time I checked, we really need to focus on the maintenance of these things.
Yeah, the town does have a agreement to maintain a bubbler.
Okay, a bubbler,
Yeah. The ponds.
and then,
So yet to be installed.
okay, thank you. All right, back to us. What would we like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to approve this based on the park board recommendations, the sidewalk recommendations, the fencing recommendations, as well as the tree recommendations that we spoke of tonight.
Yep.
And also keep the ponds as is.
Can I just?
Sure.
There's a motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second. All right, discussion. I'll let you start, Mr. Vanderwood.
I'll just point out that we have not received a drainage report yet for this.
Drainage report.
Right.
May I respond to that?
Sure. Hold on a second. Is there something else?
And we've also not received an updated plat document that reflects some of the revisions that we had.
Okay, because I mean, what we have in the package, what is being motioned on? Yes. Is that the most updated? You're telling me it's not?
It's the most updated material that we have.
Okay, so Mr. Turing is going to speak to updated material, I would assume.
I did submit a drainage report.
Okay,
I did not resubmit the drainage report with the information that was requested by Jill D. Thomasino, because it's on there, but that's okay. I will clarify that.
right.
But I
So
did
the
submit
most thing
it.
I'm worried about is that the option that says that this subdivision will flood is not part of what we're talking about here, right? You can't guarantee if you put 10 gallons of water in a 5-gallon bucket, there will be something.
Whole bathtub thing.
There you go.
It's fine.
Okay, so, and then, the comments about the park and all that,
Park, yes, park, sidewalks, fencing, landscaping.
because, Mr. Vanderwood's gonna have to write this down, and I'd like to know what we'd be voting on.
Fencing, the items that we talked about.
May I say one other thing?
Yes, you may.
The first remonstrator stated that she really liked the pine trees because there are not a lot of trees in this subdivision. Those are the trees I was talking about, which are on the east side of Outlot C.
You were saving those.
When the subdivision was done, the town did not have the same requirements that they have now. And there is a requirement to plant a tree in the right of way every 30 feet. So there will be trees.
So
along
what does
the
that mean to
right-of-way.
those 5 or 4 current pine trees? Are they staying in the mix or are they getting reshuffled?
If the sidewalk is moved up to the curb, they can stay. If the sidewalk is forced to be back at the property line and provide a 10-foot grass parkway, they would have to come down.
Don, when we're looking at the sidewalk, we're pushing up to the curb, can you make it a little bit wider so two people can pass at least?
I would think we probably could, sure, that shouldn't be a
You
problem.
know, that way,
And
you're
there
not
might
right
be-
along a curb line with a stroller, you got a little bit more room or something.
Well, we haven't taken a real close look at it, but there might be the possibility to get 3 or 4 or 5 feet between the curb and the sidewalk also. It's just getting the entire 10 feet would require dramatic changes.
Sure, willing to work with staff and Tom, we are getting those sidewalks and providing for some.
Okay.
That's my motion.
All right, I mean, is there any other discussion with regards to that? I mean, I would like to at least have Mr. Vanderwood give me some idea. He's got this kind of,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
yes, sir, Mr. Friedman.
All right, so I'm not clear as to what they are now proposing to do about the sidewalks and what they are not willing to do about the sidewalks. Are they talking about eliminating sidewalks? Are they talking about making them narrower? I can't.
Sidewalks, so that's for sure, but I'm trying to get a rehash of the motion of what they're going to do. But I mean, just as an overview, Mr. Friedman, while the town works on that, is that they're going to try to do the best they can to put safe sidewalks in around the current topography and structures that are existing.
To make it walkable, make the subdivision walkable.
And make it safe for pedestrians.
Make it walkable, that's why we talked about having
Safe
a
sidewalks.
linear fence.
So Mr. Vanderwood, how about that motion? Have some idea? Hold on a second, Councilwoman.
I think so.
Okay, can you help me? Because I can't remember all the things that he. Yeah,
Right? It was the park board recommendations. It was a walkable sidewalk for connectivity. It was the fencing along Columbia as well as the fencing down the pond. It was also the, cul-de-sac, the trees, removing the trees, keeping the pine trees. And in lieu of the parkway trees, we're relocating those parkway trees that were going there into another public green space. And that doesn't have to be right away, it had to be after the master plan of the park, right? But there's agreement to put the trees in, once the master plan of the park comes in.
Yeah, that's kind of an agreement with the park board, isn't it?
There's still gotta be a spot where you put those trees somewhere, so it's gotta be in a public plan, you can't just put it. Mile out.
Right, understood.
And did you say the cul-de-sac?
Cul-de-sac.
Oh, you just said that.
and the motion and a second. Any other discussion? Did you have something, Councilwoman?
I do, I was just saying, because there's so much involved with these sidewalks to Ms. Kaufman's point. If we have that approval, that we have some kind of visual, I'm not saying it has to come back in front of this, but that it looks right, that we're not just, a fence can look many different ways. I'm just saying, how are we gonna control, say, this is proper look for, not just a big fence.
No, I think there's 3 of us, I have a lot, you live in there, you live in there, I'll be living there a year and a half. I'm assuming you want like a 4-foot something in that, it's ornamental.
Ornamental rail,
That you can-
similar to what we've got
That's
down on
open
Calumet
air, it
Avenue.
doesn't look like a stockade type fence,
Right.
right?
Bronze,
Down Columbia.
like
Right.
similar, but slightly taller.
I just want to make sure it's being reviewed by, at least by staff, so it's. Or
Okay.
pull two of the plan commission and to look at it, say, give a nod. I think that's all.
The only, I would just further suggest that if we condition upon receipt of an updated plat that shows, that reflects the comments in our report that we sent back to them, as well as final review by our town engineer. Because I'm not finding that drainage report. I don't.
I think that's agreeable to final plat as well as the final drainage report, right? It's pretty basic. I'll add that.
I'll second. adding that to the motion.
Am I meeting Robert's rules over there, David, with this?
So far, so good.
Okay. Thanks. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? More discussion? All right, be there none. When you're ready, Mr. Vanderwood, roll call.
Okay, Councilor Mellon,
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Freeman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. Congratulations. All right, next up on the agenda, PC 21-018, Town of Munster requesting zoning text amendments designating the residence portion of live, work, mixed use or flex buildings in CD4A, CD4B, CD5 as conditional use in CD4A, CD4B, and CD5 districts. I love this stuff. Mr. Vanderwood.
Be brief on this. This is a proposed amendment, set of text amendments to the Munster zoning ordinance, reflecting the discussion that has been had here at the planning commission over the past 2 months, 2 or 3 months actually. What it does is it amends these tables shown here to designate this residence portion of live, work, mixed use or flex building in the CD4A, CD4B, and CD5 districts. Currently, they're shown as a permitted use, or that use is shown as a permitted use. That would designate this as a conditional use, which would require a public hearing before the Board of Zoning Appeals and Plan Commission approval. So there's 4 tables shown here that are just in our zoning ordinance. This is for CD4A, CD4B, CD5, and then there's a table that compiles all of the districts and all the uses together. So what we would be asking for is a public hearing tonight and then a motion to forward to the town council a favorable recommendation to amend the zoning in accordance with this report.
Thank you. Any questions on this? Comments?
The only comment for me, we discussed it obviously before, it's just another reason that I think we need the comprehensive plan so we can, I think it's good to have conditional use, we have control of this, but let's see where the whole town wants to go. So,
When was the last comprehensive plan? Didn't we just do one? 2010. 2010 flies. So how often in your world, Tom, do these comprehensive plans happen in municipalities? Every time there's another grant, how does 10 years? What is it?
10 years is a good standard for a very rapidly growing or rapidly changing community. You would even want to do it more frequently.
So how is that different from what we just did in completely rezoning the entire town? Isn't that as comprehensive as you can get? I mean, we got into the sidewalks.
Right, so the zoning ordinance is a regulatory document and a comprehensive plan is more of a policy document. Comprehensive plan sets up a broad vision and really talks about, type of land uses, thoroughfare connectivity, whereas the zoning ordinance implements the comprehensive plan.
Got it. That's a council thing. Yeah. 10-4. Okay. All right, so when the council gets that, they'll let us know. There's a motion and second. Any discussion? Mr. Vanderwood.
did you open that for?
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Excellent one. Public hearing. I know those 2 guys want to talk about it. So I'm going to open the public hearing on this amendment to the zoning ordinance. Going once, going twice, and closing it now. Unless there's somebody online. I'm sorry, I'm still not good at that.
I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay. So, okay. Mr. Vanderwood, thank you, Councilman.
So I think we need a motion.
We have one. We hadn't made one yet?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Thank you.
So just to be clear, that's a motion for a favorable recommendation. Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. All right, findings of facts. Mr. Wickman, we have to go through every one of these, right?
We're starting with 7A, is that where we are?
Yes.
Yes, each one.
Each one needs its own deal.
Right.
All right, so the finding of facts, I got PC 20-009, Guy Costanza, GM contractor requesting approval of development plan for the commercial development at 407-411 Ridge Road. What say you?
Mr. Commissioner, I move that we approve PC 20-009 as presented.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second, is there any discussion? Mr. Freeman?
No, I second that too. That's fine.
All right. Mr. Vanderwood?
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. Next up is PC 20-009 subdivision preliminary plat. Parth Patel requesting the approval of a one-lot subdivision and development plan to construct a three-unit commercial building, including us, Moody King, at 8130-8138 Calumet Avenue. Can you talk a little faster? And what say you?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve these findings of fact.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Be there none. Mr. Vanderwood?
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes.
Brian Specht.
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. Whatever. PC 21-010 development plan approval. Parth Patel, I'm really doing this without my glasses. I'm pretty happy about that. Parth Patel requesting approval of a one-lot subdivision and a development plan to construct a three-unit commercial building in Smoothie Kingdom at 8138 Calumet Avenue.
That's 21-009.
No.
It is 2110.
Oh, okay.
It's.
Hey, Vice,
it is
just
issued
make a
with the
motion, will you?
plan. Previous one is for the one lot subdivision. This is for the development plan.
Cross-eyed.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve PC 21-010.
I second the motion.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Mr. Vanderwood?
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Brian
Yes.
Roland Raffin, Brian Specht, Chairman Baker.
Yes. PC 21-012, Plan Unit Development Amendment, Hospitality Project Services, requesting an amendment for the Lake Business Center PUD to permit the development of a home to suites hotel. Wait a minute, this is the one that we just held. So we're not doing this one. Do I have to table it, or do I just not bring it up?
Tom,
Or can we amend it?
How about do this and we can just do a motion to table, how's that? All right, it's to permit development of a home to suites hotel at 9200 Calumet Avenue, Lake Business Center, PUD.
I make a motion that we table PC 21-012. I'll second.
Motion and a second, any discussion?
Was it possible to amend this one so it's an unfavorable recommendation?
No, we tried that, I guess, during the course of that, and that was something that he wasn't gonna be able
What
to
we're
do.
doing is a little smoother way to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion for the table? So there's a motion and a second, Mr. Vanderwood.
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin. Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. All right, one more, gentlemen. PC 21-018, the town of Munster requesting the zoning text amendments designating the resident portion of live work mixed use or flex building on CD4A, CD4B, CD5 as a conditional use in CD4A, CD4B at CD5 districts. Do you go to classes to write this kind of stuff? That's what I want to know.
Just comes naturally.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve PC 21-018.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
And a second? Any discussion?
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Raffin,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. All right, moving right along, since I see the gentleman in the back, I'm on other business, additional items for discussion. I'm gonna move up to Centennial Village Building F parking spaces. What's going on, Mr. Vanderwood?
Okay, let me pull this up here. I'll give a brief summary and I'll let the representatives from Centennial Village talk in a little more detail, but.
We're talking to the microphone, please, because you're on Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I think you're all aware, Building G of Centennial Village, which is shown here, is nearing completion. And they're at the point where they're pouring sidewalks, getting ready to pour sidewalks and kind of put the finishing touches on it. As part of this project, they're requesting approval to kind of move forward with part of the site for building F, which is shown here. This is 45th Street. This is
I can't see what you're talking about. Okay, up in the right-hand corner, outside of the shaded area, Councilman, where the
Right.
three pillars are, next to the roadway.
correct. So there's a section here that currently, basically, the pavement ends and it just turns into dirt right here. And what they're hoping to do is, rather than just hold off on completing this section, they'd like to, until they can actually do something here on building F, they'd like to just basically complete this little section of parking with the curb bump outs here, parking islands, and just kind of put a finishing edge on this section in anticipation of building G opening up, and then also providing some additional parking. Because as you all know, that this is like Business Center, this is a shared parking arrangement, so sometimes the buildings get completed prior to all of the parking being, all of the available parking. So rather than come in, like I said, with a full development plan approval for this building F, they're just seeking kind of an initial approval to go ahead and build this section in conjunction with building G.
Those 8 parking spots right there.
Which building is built yet? Is it built yet?
Do you have an aerial?
I'll go back here.
I don't know if the aerial is gonna be up to date as far as the construction,
I don't think it is. Oh,
unless they
actually, it is. flew it. So this is building G. This is the 4-story. This is the 4-story.
Can you zoom in a little more, please?
building.
And I don't need to see the brickyard.
Okay, I'm with you. That's the residential building.
Correct. This is building F. You can see that this is all dirt right here. So what they're hoping to do is basically continue this line of parking here. Now, this normally would be approved as part of a building F development plan approval because it's on that site. But they're not ready to come in and do that yet. But it would make sense to add that parking in, finish off this curve and basically clean it up as well as add some additional parking. So that when building G opens up and is online, there's some additional parking here as well as just a nicer sort of finished edge.
Are you guys just gonna put the binder down? I'm sorry, are you just planning to just put the binder down in that area and service later after the building?
No, actually, Tom, if you could bring the site plan back up, I'd like to kind of walk over there.
Hello, who are you, sir? You have the microphone like you've done this before.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. My name is Jeff Dan. I'm a principal with DVG team. We've been a civil and site engineer for Centennial Village for quite some time, and it's good to see all of you again. As Tom was indicating, and as you saw from the aerial photo, the asphalt binder that's out there now goes from this curb line up to this curb line. So it's just going to be the drive aisle that was approved for building B on the corner for the site plan. As well as when building G was done, the site plan only showed the north edge of this drive aisle to be paved. It would seem inefficient for us to come back as all this construction of building G is going in to not put these 4 parking spaces in and these 8 parking spaces in as part of it. And then coming back another year from now when building F comes in and then have a new raw edge of asphalt, we want to put binder and surface and stripe all of this right now. And if we can kind of get that done before the end of this construction season, that's what we're asking you to do, or ask for the approval to do tonight. And then when we do have building F designed and ready to be built, we come back to your plan commission with the plans for those, for the actual building, and then have you take a look at it and approve it at a site plan approval meeting.
Are you worried about the curves getting chewed up and stuff like that, or are you gonna leave the curves up?
We've done a pretty good job with the curbs that are along Centennial Drive and Village Parkway with the building of Building G. So you're always worried about that, but you just make sure you have a contractor and the general conditions are that they protect those curbs.
They replace them later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your access is a little different coming out this.
Right.
Up here at the building G
Right.
on the backside.
We won't be putting the sidewalks, it's an 8-foot sidewalk around the perimeter. We will not do that, but we would put the curb to frame the asphalt parking lot.
Any other questions? But my question is, why are they coming to us? I mean, if this is already done, I mean, shouldn't that be something staff does? I mean, why? I don't understand.
The reason they're coming to you is because this is part of a site plan that hasn't been approved yet by the planning commission. So it's kind of giving them permission to sort of advance into a site plan without actually getting the formal site plan approval.
The site plan is the 12 parking spaces?
The site plan would be those parking spaces plus the building and any
Perimeter sidewalks.
stuff around the building. So normally, as Jeff said, so for example, with building B, which is on the corner, you approved building B as well as the parking to the east. With
Yes.
building G, you approved building G as well as the parking to the west and to the north. So
Right.
that's how you've been approving things.
I understand.
And this would be an atypical
Right.
approval because you're just doing the parking ahead of the.
Well, I mean, years ago, was put all the parking in because there's gonna be no parking. And guess what? There's been no parking. So why? All right, so this is the process back to the,
Better ask your permission than forgiveness later on, right?
you know, whatever. I get it.
In talking with Tom about this, it really, we've got a site plan that you approved, site for building B, and we're adding, if you want to think of it this way, we're adding 12 spaces to the building B approval, and we're asking to amend that building B approval. You can look at it that way too, and just felt that it was important for you to, as a commission, to see it as well. So that's why we're here.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the amendment to.
We don't, are they requesting this? What's the formal thing here? This is public sector stuff. I'm not going to prison for 18 parking spots.
Or you want
I
consensus?
don't think that this is a substantial change, so I don't think a motion is necessary.
Okay. So it's more guidance.
I think it's fine, just protect the curves or replace them later on to get you go. Okay. When's the building up gonna go? You have a design or?
Mr. Kimball, could you introduce yourself? We haven't seen you in a long time. Could you give us a little update of what's going on? We don't get anything from, the people that are doing all the work.
And the time for writing articles.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good to see you all again.
You miss us, don't you?
I do. You brought back all these memories. I, like you, thought, why do we have to do this? I asked Tom, do we have to actually?
Yeah, well, here we are.
For the
Let's do
commission,
it.
so, hey, yeah, let me just give you an update. You asked the question about building F, when that may happen. Well, we continue to lease space in the commercial space in building G. And it could turn out here in the next few weeks or months, all the space might be leased in building G, and I'll have to have something else leased, so I will start actually on building F. We do have considerable activity, and as you know, we did sign a very notable lease in building B. We're very proud about that, I think, the community as well.
Could you repeat? I didn't know.
It's Rosebud Steakhouse is coming
nice.
to building B, right? So
Right from day one, back to those first memories, when I first came in front of the commission, they would say, I want a steakhouse that has white tablecloths. So
Yep.
I sent a note to Mr. Reed and others saying they got this done. So yeah, things continue to progress. A lot of activity. I wish in some cases it was faster, in other cases slower, but building G is looking nice. You know, at least I think so. I would like to think we could somehow get an award for the look of the building. I think it's the only one with subterranean parking, mixed use like this in Lake County. So the town should be very proud of what we're doing there.
How's the first floor leasing going on that again?
We have 2 signed leases and some additional for LOI, very close to signing. So I think by the end of next week, we should be well over 50% leased on the first floor commercial space. Condos are moving along. It's a little over 50% sold. Hard, they can't back out. You know, we had a little bit more activity early when there was a refundable deposit, but a very, I think it's going along nicely.
How long before you think you CO, Mr. Kimmel? Certificate of occupancy on that building?
We're committing for building G. You're asking?
Yeah, is that the big building?
There's
G?
G is a big building. It's 100,000 square feet.
Yeah.
All levels, including the subterranean, 42 parking spaces in the garage. It's going to be staggered. You know, Katie Rose, the ladies boutique, is going to open first, and they want to get open obviously for the holiday season for Thanksgiving. So we're pressing for that. The condos, we're going to do it as they're sold. We've met with staff, and some are wanting to get in as soon as late November. But I think the building
This year? Hey, I don't
It's all
know.
with the pandemic, but I haven't done it.
Hey, supply chain and COVID, and nothing can happen.
We have to be done this year, right? So, and so we hope most of the sold units are occupied by the end of December.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the development?
Yeah, I've had some people come, I don't think we've spoken before. So
I don't think we have. Steve Whitman.
Had some people who maybe live on the other side of Clay Hole Lake with ideas about, as these buildings come up, to have a nice vista of the lake and use that as a feature instead of it terminating at a building at, the end of what's this road?
Oh, okay. So you're suggesting that if you put up the aerial,
I'm also curious, who's your connection on Google? It looks like this aerial was taken today.
we pay more than we should. So the original plan has a big building
Right.
here. The intent is, and it may not be too much longer if I may just share openly that Village Parkway, we'd like to have the vista extending all the way through and breaking building.
I don't remember the building.
It's a 42,000 square foot building. I forget the letter, and into 2 separate buildings. And being that we've learned a lot about the condos, that the upper floor condos, practically the whole 4th floor is sold out. The 2nd floor is partially, the 3rd floor, not so much. So we think that keeping with the lifestyle center, we're talking about, I heard what happened with Home 2. Another hotel, hold on, a hotel with condominiums above. We're much like the Waldorf Astoria in Chicago, but a small version with a courtyard. And so we could keep the vista. We can maybe do another hotel back here with some condos above. And we're hoping for a professional healthcare or user, or perhaps a retailer that would take another with some condos above that too. So we've got the right to build 172 condos, of which we're just finding that the upper price, the upper levels are much more attractive to the market.
So replacing what was like looking for an amendment to replace, not have the 4 together. Like the 4
We'd still have the 4, we have the 4 core buildings that are This would be, there's a big building back here, Leanne, which actually would split in half and actually separate it by Village Parkway to keep that vista, that student spot.
I think it's the orange building.
Yeah, we had, actually.
Yeah, I'd seen this before, and we'd like to take the orange building out and we could see.
Yeah.
We've actually had some discussions with the park about filling in at some point more of the lake and putting a peninsula out here or something parallel with Village Parkway.
It's a great untapped, I grew up in Munster and I went to the Brickyard. Sneak over there and try and fish or something, but it's a great untapped resource. So many people have no idea that there's.
A lot of people don't know it's here. I actually presented to the park district a future 4 islands connected by bridges, reshaping the entire thing in conjunction with the development of Centennial. Because what's going to happen is we have a unique opportunity, because when we dig basements, we have 10 to 12,000 cubic yards. We could, instead of hauling it off, it's actually more effective to actually put it around the lake and create islands and walkways, much like a botanical garden. It would really be a huge amenity. So I don't know how receptive they were, but I thought there was a vision that I felt like I needed to cast. Right?
It's also something, I keep talking about the comprehensive plan, but this is a big asset that we think about. How do we make it, how do we want it to feel, and what do we want people to be able to do as they live in Munster, come to the parks. So I love that you're thinking with us and with the Parks Department. We don't know how that park might evolve, what might get added to the clubhouse or things done differently with the clubhouse. So I would just welcome your creativity and continue shared thinking.
Yeah, thank you. And one thing we have to do, and we have to walk before we run, just so you know, right here where there's a 19,000 cubic yard pile of fill left on my property illegally.
Right.
You know that.
Yeah.
And it's very clear that that's the property of the town of Munster that's unsuitable fill as defined by the specifications of the Walsh contract. So
It is or isn't suitable?
it's not suitable.
It's not suitable.
In our opinion. Have to talk to the engineer. Also, Walsh has not been our friend. They left 7,000 cubic yards of dirt. It's like someone pulling up in your front yard and dumping a big dump truck of dirt and leaving. They left 7,000 cubic yards of unpermissible fill on my property, and it may end up in a lawsuit.
Why isn't town going after Walsh for?
Anyhow, I didn't mean to. But it's a big issue.
Otherwise,
Otherwise, we're gonna end up with a sledding hill in Centennial Village.
Yeah, because I was wondering why.
So
it's all up to
I've
the
been
property.
trying to prompt Dustin and others to be sort of, sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. These guys are not friendly to us.
I didn't know where that stood right now. I mean, so it's still in the same spot. It's not changed.
And we were getting a permit. Dustin has a proposal to, because of the, and Jeff, you could explain this much better than I, because of some of the IDEM and EPA rules, the classification of the lake is such where we can actually fill 0.87 acres of the surface area. So we can push it into the lake. But, that cost alone is pretty substantial. And so who's going to pay for it? I think Walsh should be responsible for it. Quite frankly, they're contractually obligated to do it.
It's a contract, I don't know why Walsh is calling her. To build a hell when they do a project.
That's what the paperwork says.
Yeah.
I'm not going there.
No, don't go there now. All right, so do you have any activity on the commercial side, for the north side of 45th?
All the time. I have various.
Is it all small? Is it larger? Because originally it was one of the railroad tracks was going to be the parcel that was going to be a driver, some retail. The retail's changed significantly since this project first started.
It has, and some grocers are still interested. There's some healthcare businesses that are interested.
Did you talk to the Aldi's guy?
I haven't. I know they're looking to open stores.
They are. They do a bunch out by me.
I'm not giving up on something bigger and better.
Yeah.
have to finish this. This has been through the pandemic, the time delays, the cost overruns. We have to get everything sold, then we'll make a decision. Logical next one would be to build this. With building F going up, this would complete this quadrant. We get a building H, which would be here, that would finish this quadrant. I would like to start to push some development back towards the lake. That's why I like the idea of putting a hotel back here, because we have real demand with that. We have demand for condominiums. We could start to extend the development back towards the water, so.
You ever think about like a smaller boutique hotel?
Yes, but I think it's the brands and the reservation systems that really make the difference. But you can still actually make it look authentically boutique, but still have the power of the reservation system.
Luxury collection. There are, Bombay is so many different properties now.
It would help out if they had a hotel with a true restaurant and stuff. It wasn't just a.
There you go, Roland, spending other people's money, I guess.
I know what people are looking at town, everyone I hear when they say gripe, and that's why I brought that up at a hotel. Over the last month, I heard so many gripes over, well, we need another Hilton Suites or another Hilton Suites, we need another one of those hotels like we need a whole one at. So I'm just bringing that up because I've
Yeah,
heard a lot of
I've
feedback
heard a
over
lot
the
of it
last month.
too, but at the same time,
They-
this is more of a lifestyle community with combination mixed use. We'd have subterranean parking for the condos, the hotel. It would be totally different than building just a franchise.
Standalone
hotels.
Hampton Inn, because that's the last thing I want to see.
We have had an interest in a restaurant here that's a rooftop gig, which would be, we'll see where that ends up. That's it.
It looks really good.
All
I
right.
mean,
Thank you very much, sir. So if they were to have to do other, let me ask it this way. If I was the developer of this property, wanted to put a gravel temporary parking lot, what would be my process?
Is this, it would probably, like a
Just temporary.
temporary, are we talking? There is a gravel temporary parking lot out there right now.
Okay.
There is
I
one
think
right.
it-
I mean, because when I go to
Right here.
Pitaro and it's full, I'm parking in some interesting spots.
Trying to
And I see
remember-
that big wide open space.
Trying to remember what process we followed when we expanded that out. I think we let that go.
Yeah, it's something to consider.
But just so you know, Bill, me and Jeff were just doing some calculations that there's 208 parking spaces in here for
43,600 square feet.
43,600 square feet of commercial, which is just under 5 spaces per thousand, which is very normal and natural for typical retail.
It is.
So we're better than most people think. And the benefit is that orthopedics works during the day. El Salto's mostly nighttime. The steakhouse is gonna be nighttime. So the shared parking with different demand times is a big deal.
But everybody wants to park in the front, man, you know that. So, I mean, like 208 spaces with, 5 blocks, that, I get it. But I mean, even I'm talking to Kitaro in the South Park there with everything happening down there, it's the same type of a thing. Where to park, now we're parking in the hotel lot.
But that's by design. The Harvest Room was put next to the hotel. It's a morning spot where people leave the hotel, it vacates their parking, Harvest Room takes it. So parking really hasn't, we want it to be a little tight. We like for people to take one drive through to find their space, and it's okay if you have to walk 20 paces to the restaurant.
Excellent answer.
Because we're a walking community.
Right, except when you're talking to the senior citizens that are, that's who I talk to.
maybe it's an Apple Watch. You'll get all excited about your rings.
Believe it or not, there's some people that are a lot older than me that go there and spend money. And that's some of the folks that I'm just trying to factor in, because not everybody can walk for a significant period of time, especially when it's inclement outside. So there's a lot of demographics that'll go through there, especially at that price point. So that's just, I was just curious. All right, thank you.
All good, looks good. Yeah, thank you.
Good to see you all.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
thanks, Sam.
All right, so we have one more, is PC 210510. Let me start again. PC 21015, Guy Costanza Contracting, requesting approval of the final plat for the Ridge Cafe addition, a one-lot subdivision at 407, 411 Ridge Road. Mr. Vanderwood, why is that under other business?
Not a public hearing or a preliminary hearing.
Okay.
It's just other business.
That's harsh. You've been in California too much,
Motion we
man.
approve PC docket number 21-015.
I will second.
Was there any discussion?
Hallelujah.
Either none. Mr. Vanderwood.
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Tulowitzki,
Yes.
Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Rathman.
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. All right, anything else, folks, for the good of the order?
I'll just
Make a motion,
remind.
we adjourn.
And hold on, go ahead, Tom.
I was just gonna remind members of the plat committee that we have another
Oh,
meeting
no.
following this.
Another meeting following this?
To the plat committee. So, Stuart and Steve.
Okay, and there was a motion to adjourn, is that correct, Mr. Speck?
I made a motion.
I second that.
And there's a second, and any discussion, be there none, the new rule says that we have to do roll call.
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Tulowitzki. Yep. Stuart Friedman,
Yes.
Roland Rathman,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Chairman Baker.
Yes. Thank you all. Next meeting is November 9th, believe it or not, at 7:30. And thank you for moving the BZA agenda in a little bit more manageable thing. That we greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mr.
I disagree.
And I should-
Nice.